Hi, this is Elizabeth with Felted Sky Studio, here with the instructions for our Pumpkins Needle Felting Kit. So if you've purchased the kit, there's just one other thing you'll need before you get started, which is a foam mat for needle felting. So any foam mat that's sold for needle felting will work. You might already have one, and as long as it's dense enough foam and thick enough, you just don't want your needle to poke through it. This is our work surface. So they come in different sizes, and the small one that we sell would also work for this project. So let me go ahead and open up the kit and tell you about what's inside. Pull it all out here. And first I just want to mention that the needles are in this piece of foam board, and that's to protect the needles just so that they don't get bent or anything, and sometimes it's hard to wiggle them out. And it's also because they're very sharp here at the point, and you want to keep it back in the foam board when you're not using one of the needles. And especially if you have kids or pets in the house, that's just always a good idea. And then you wiggle them back out when you're ready to be felting. Another place you can store the needles would be in the side of your foam mat. So sometimes I'll also keep mine there, and that keeps them out of the way and protected. So that's the needles, and in this kit there are 3 different sizes of felting needles. So here on the instruction sheet you see the color coding at the bottom, so I'll talk about this, and it's written in the steps, but for some steps we use the one with the black tip, which is a 36 triangle, for some we use the white, and for some the purple. And that will all make more sense as we get started. So also in here is what we like to call core wool in the fiber art world. So this is just a wool batting that's fairly minimally processed, and that's a nice thing. It's called core wool for needle felting because it's going in the middle of the project at the core, and we use this type of wool because it's a little bit less expensive. So that goes where you're not going to see it, and we sculpt with that. And then we put the pretty colors. This roving goes on over top, so on the outside. So this is a nice wool roving, and we have it in lots of nice colors that coordinate well for these pumpkins. Alright, so that's what's in here, and let me just say one more thing about the instruction sheet. So even though you're watching the video, which is great, and that's the best way to learn, you might want to go ahead and follow along in the instruction sheet, and each step is numbered, and there is another set of numbers next to each step, and that's the time stamp. So that correlates with the video, and you can fast forward or rewind just to the step that you want to see again, or you might want to skip ahead to other things. So you can follow along very easily with those time stamps with the instruction sheet. Okay, so now I think we're ready to get started. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is get out our core wool, and we're going to unroll it, and then we're going to divide it up into strips, and then we're going to roll those strips into the pumpkin shapes. So this one unrolled nicely, and it's almost all one big piece. I have one little extra here. But if yours is in different shapes or sizes, we're still going to do this the same. So you'll just divide up into strips, and they might be different lengths, but they will work up the same way. Okay, so for our little pumpkin, this is more the medium size, I guess. So we have the medium kind of round guy, we have the little short and fat pumpkin, and then the taller, slightly narrower pumpkin. Really, he's just taller. So the way that we're going to shape them really starts out when we're doing these strips and we're rolling the shapes from the core wool. So I'm going to just divide this. I'm going to tear off a piece that looks something like this. And then I'm going to tear it into a strip lengthwise. So this pumpkin, let me just show you with my measuring tape. He's going to end up about 2.5 inches tall. So when we're doing these strips, if you want to measure, it doesn't really need to be exact, but if that helps you out. So we want to make these strips about 2.5 to 3 inches wide. And then that's what we're going to use to make that shape. So once I have a strip that's about 3 inches wide, and it doesn't really matter how long it is, but about 3 inches wide, then I'm going to take it and start rolling it. And when I start rolling, I'm making this fairly tight. It doesn't have to be super tight, but I'm also going to fold the ends in as I'm going along, just because we don't want the roll to get really any wider than that 2.5 or 3 inches. Let me measure my roll here. So I'm at a little over 2.5, close to 3. So that's how tall that we want to keep the roll for that pumpkin shape. So I've got one strip on now, and that's what I have, and then I'm going to take my next one and just start it right where I left off and keep rolling. And now I'm going to pull this strip and make it thin out just a little bit, so that when I'm rolling it, I'm concentrating a little bit more of the wool around the middle. So we have it as tall as we need now. We just need to fill out the middle so that we're rounding out our pumpkin shape. Now I have something like this, and it might just need one more little small piece to wrap around the middle so that it's a little bit rounded. So I'm just going to tear one more piece from my core wool. It can be a little bit thinner. I don't think we need much at this point. So again, I'm just putting that right on where I left off. And then I'm going to pull and just make sure that this is wrapping mostly around the middle. And then when my little round pumpkin shape here seems big enough, I might just go ahead and pull off the excess. So you might have ended up with strips that seemed to give you just the right shape, but if not, just pull off any extra. So again, I'll measure for you here so you can compare if you want. So we're at close to 3 inches, maybe not quite, and then as far as how wide it is, it's about the same. It's maybe 3 or a little bit over. Oh, upside down there. So there you see about how wide it is. So now I'm just going to set this one aside, and we will do the next one. So I think we'll go ahead and do the shorter, a little bit wider pumpkin here. And I guess I could show you how we'll measure him. I don't know why I call it a him, but so this one is about 2 inches, maybe just a little under 2 inches. So when we're tearing these strips, we want to make them about 2 inches wide, whereas the last strips we did were about 3 inches wide. So I'm just going to start tearing my core wool again so that I have some thin strips. So I'm going to get 2 or 3 of those ready to start this pumpkin. And then I'm just going to save what's left over for our last pumpkin. So we're doing this the same way. I'm going to fold in these ends if it seems like it's lengthening out too much. And I'm just going to roll. And we just want to keep this one, oh, lost it there. Happens. So we just don't want it to lengthen out this way. We're trying to keep all the wool nicely compacted here, and we want to get our roll to stay nice and short here. And we're going to keep most of our wool in the center and just keep filling out so that we get nice rounded squat little pumpkin. So here I go with the next one. It helps on this one, I feel like, to keep my other hand on this way, just to kind of keep the wool going where I want it to go. Now I have something about like this. That was 2 strips, I think. And I think we could use one more. So I'm going to put one more on here. And if it gets to the point where it seems wide enough, I'll tear off the excess. So here is our first one, and here is our second one. And when we start felting, this extra fuzziness at the top and bottom are going to compact. So I think this is a fairly good shape. So I'll set that aside. Oh, wait a minute. Go ahead and measure for you. You want to compare. So this is maybe 3.5 inches wide, and at this point just a little over 2 inches tall. And some of that is going to shrink down just a little bit when we do the felting. So for our last pumpkin, we're going to get ready. It is about 3.5 inches. So we want these strips to be closer to 4 inches. So we'll see what we have left here. I'm just going to tear off. I'm going to end up with some thin pieces anyway, but I have one left that is about 4 inches wide. That's what I'll start with. So we're just going to do the roll again. And once it's started, I'm going to concentrate a little more of the wool in the center by pulling it. Just as I roll, I'm making sure a little bit more of it stays in the center and doesn't lengthen out too much towards the ends. So we have that, and then with the last strips and bits that I have left over here, I'm going to put them on, and this strip was fairly small, so you can even take it and lengthen out the fibers if you need to. So we'll compare here. That is looking pretty good. I have one more little strip here I might figure out which is going to be my top and which is going to be my bottom, and put on just a little more wool wherever it looks like I might need some. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And go ahead and measure it. So we have 4.5 inches here, and maybe 3 inches wide, or a little bit more. Compare that to this other one, and again it's going to shrink down a bit in the felting. So then I'll show you, this was the first one we did, and then our tall, thinner pumpkin, and our slightly shorter and fatter pumpkin. So that's what we have, and if you need to unroll and fix those shapes at all, that's totally fine. So now I'm going to get my mat, and we'll head to the next part. So to start the shaping, I'm going to demo the kind of rounder and medium-sized pumpkin. And so I'm going to get that roll and put it down on my mat, and I'm going to get the needle that has the black tip. So this is the 36 triangle, and this needle is very good for our initial shaping. So that's why we're using this, because it makes the initial shaping go faster and just be easier with this particular needle. So all I'm going to do is start poking. So I'm going to hold and make sure to keep my other fingers here out of the way so that I don't poke them with the needle. And I'm just going to start poking. I'm going to do the top and bottom first. So you can see I'm going in at maybe this angle here. So whichever way, whichever angle we're putting the needle in when we're poking, it's going to push the wool in that direction. So if I'm poking here, it's going to push this way, so I'm going to keep this rounded out. If I'm poking straight in, it's going to push the wool this way. So that would flatten out the top and bottom. So we want it mostly flat, but not all the way flattened. So just kind of watch as I'm working, and that's what we're doing with the way that we angle the needle. So whichever way you're angling it is pretty much the way that the wool is going to move. And that's how the sculpting works. So right now I'm just going to poke some on this end, and then once I've poked one section, I'm going to turn the whole shape and start poking the next section. And I'm just kind of looking at the shape that I want it to be. So we want kind of a round, I want this to end up kind of a round ball. Not exactly. It's going to have some roundedness to the middle though, for sure. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over now that I've done a little bit on that. And on the bottom here, we have a lot of fluffy wool layers going on here. And sometimes it helps to even take the needle and push or pull the wool where you want it to go before you start poking. So like with these outer layers that are just kind of sticking out there and looking fluffy, I'm going to take the needle and kind of put them in towards the center. And that's going to help round out the bottom and hold all that together. So I'm going to poke a little bit and then turn and keep poking. So I'm just going to get all of these layers connected. Just the action of the needle is starting to felt them and sculpt them. Sculpt the wool. So we're doing the shaping gradually. If you worked in one spot for too long, you might flatten it out too much, and then it would be hard to keep a nice rounded, even shape. So we kind of sculpt gradually, poking on one area and then turn and poke the next little section. So you can see I'm just kind of flipping it back and forth, and wherever it's still fuzzy and I haven't gotten to work yet, I'm just starting to go over all of those areas, and we want to get to the point where we've kind of done every part of our pumpkin here for this initial round of the felting. So here it is. It's still pretty lumpy, and I've been pretty much around the whole thing, but I haven't really worried too much about what shape that I'm ending up with yet. Just gotten all of the wool kind of started felting, and we've gotten it all attached, all of our layers. So now I'm going to go around again doing the same thing, except I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to what shape I'm ending up with. So if you have a part where like it's sticking out too much, you're just going to poke around in that area and it's going to start to flatten out where you're poking. So I'm going to go around. I'm not really sure at this point which was the top or the bottom, but for this pumpkin it doesn't really matter. But you can keep an eye on which seems to be a better shape for the top and which seems to be a little more flat for the bottom. But at this point, if they're the same, that's totally fine. And when we do the next parts where we put on the colored wool, we can pick a top and a bottom at that point. Okay, so now I think I'm just going to speed up the video. This is pretty nice and felted on the top now, and I'm going to be flipping it over and working the other side, or whatever side that ends up being. And I'm going to flip it over and work this side and work up to the middle, and I'll just let you watch while I speed it up so we can move along a little bit on this part. Okay, so at this point, this is what we have, and I've been over the whole thing again. Let's just kind of look at it from different angles now, and if there are any places that seem like they need a little more shaping, you can go back over them. I will compare at this point to our original. So it's looking fairly similar, and we're going to continue the shaping when we put on the colored wool, and it's going to get definitely shaped more at that point. So this is all we need for now. It still has a little bit of give, especially on the sides. We don't want it to be totally solid and all the way felted, or else we couldn't get in the cute little ridges and do that side shaping. So that's what we have, and now we're ready to put some color on. So for this part, I'm going to switch needles. So I'm going to remove my black needle and get my white one. So this is our 38 triangle, and this is a good needle just for general work. So that was our initial shaping, so it went faster with the size 36. Now we're going to attach our color, and I kind of like doing that part with the 38. So this is a really nice project where you get to see and feel the difference in the needles. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get our orange roving, and we're going to position it from the center, the top here, and then we want it to just come down to the center on the other side. So I'm going to hold in the middle and pull, and just pull off pieces that are about the right size here to cover the sides. And we want to keep it not spread out too much, because we don't want any of this white core wool showing through. So we can either attach each one as we put it on, or we could do a few and then attach them at the same time. So there, I've got two that are kind of overlapping, and it's fine if there's a little extra at both ends there. So all we're going to do is hold them in place and poke these all over with our white colored needle. So we don't need these to be super smoothed out or, really finished on here yet. We just need them to stay on where we put them. So we're just going to go over them like that. You can see they're attached. So we're just going to go around the whole pumpkin like that. So I'm putting the tip in the middle, and I'm going to hold in the middle at the top here, and I'll hold on the side to tear the rest off there. And so go ahead and get that on there. I'm just going over these pieces a couple times with this needle, and that's all we're doing to get on our color. So I'll go ahead and speed up the video, and then we will do the next part once this is all the way on. Okay, so now you can see that I've gotten on our nice orange roving all over the pumpkin. And if you look around now, just check to make sure that there are no spots where your core wool is showing through. If there are, you can always just pull off a little piece, or however big a piece you need, of the roving, and just put it on wherever you need it to be a little thicker. So it would just go right on over top of the others, and you can't even really see any of that needs to be added. So once you've done that and it's all covered, we're going to get our butterscotch roving. So that's our nice yellow color. And show you on the original, that's when we're going to put the ribs in. So we're doing, show you from the top here, doing one this way and one this way. So we're making a T, and then we'll put them on the diagonal in two other spots. So I'm going to pull this out to thin it out at the end. I'm going to have kind of a thin line, and I can start it wherever, somewhere at the top here. So I'm just going to hold the line on with my fingers and then start poking right on that line I just made. So I'm just going to go over it, over that section, up and back a few times, and then I'm going to hold here with that hand and let the roving pull out so that I maintain the thinness of that line. And if it comes all the way off, you're just going to start again, just overlapping the part you already did, and we're just going to get it nice and thin there. Then I'll hold that and poke over that section. So this is what is shaping our ribs. You could do this without the butterscotch line here, without the other color of roving, but I think it just adds a little something to have that other color on there. So we're just going to go around the whole thing, making a complete circle here till we get back to where we started, and then I'm going to hold and pull off the excess, and then we'll just line that up, overlapping what we already did, and poke the rest down. Figure out where I stopped poking. You can go over this as many times as you need to till it seems like the line is nicely felted and really holding on there well. And we're not going to worry too much at this point if it looks a little covered up. We're going to be bringing these sides back a little bit in the next part. So we're just going to continue there, and now we'll be putting on the one going in this direction, and then two on the diagonal, kind of an X here, and then the other one perpendicular to the one we just put on. So again, I think I will speed up the video, and you can just watch as I add on our other ribs. Okay, so now you can see that I've gotten all of the ribs on. So we have kind of a star there on the top and the bottom. And now we're going to move on to the next section. So for that, we're going to switch out our needle again and find our needle with the purple top. So this is a finishing needle. This is a size 40 that's twisted. You can even see the twist at the bottom. So this needle is not going to do much sculpting, but it's going to help felt the rest of our sides here and make it look nice and smooth and not so fuzzy. So what we're going to do with this is to hold the pumpkin kind of on its side, and where we have a rib, we're going to push the wool kind of away from that rib by angling the needle with this angle here. And I'm going to start poking at that angle, going all along the rib and then just up just a little bit. So I'm pushing the rest of the wool in that direction and doing pretty much poking here because this is not going to disrupt our nice shaping very much. It's just going to finish and felt our sides here. So now I'm going to turn it over, and working in that same area, I'm going to go from the other rib and the same angle. So I'm going to push this wool more into the middle here. And then I'm going to go over the middle part. So again, I'm kind of shaping it gradually, and I want to maintain our nice curve there. And so once I've been over all of this little section there, that's going to be finished. And the only thing I still want to do is go back and grab my black top needle. So the first one we started with, the 36 triangle, and I'm going to go over each of the ribs with this one. And I'm poking in pretty hard so that this is doing just a little more shaping to push that rib in a little farther and give us a little more definition on the sides here, dimension. So I'm going to poke both of those ribs in a little bit more. So that's what we have. So we're going to do that for each section, and then you can decide which you want to be your top or your bottom at this point. And my original pumpkin was leaning a little. That's just what happened to him naturally. He leans a little bit. And so this one is looking like it's doing the same thing. So you can decide if you like the lean, if you're okay with that. And if not, whatever direction it's leaning, if you pick your bottom, whatever way it's leaning, if you work so it's leaning in this direction because this bottom isn't completely flat. So if you work the other side of the bottom and try and flatten it out just by poking more on that opposite side from the way that it's leaning, you can get it to be a little straighter how it's standing. I like the lean, so I'm just going to let it do what it's doing. So we're just going to work these all the same way. So we're going to do the purple needle first, and we're going to push the wool back from the ribs towards the center of this little curve. So we're going to do that on both sides. Flip around for the other side if that helps you. I work it away from the rib first, and then the center. So you just want to poke it till it seems like it's not as fuzzy and all the wool is nicely attached and looking kind of felted, but not so much that we lose our nice curve. Because if we kept poking it, it would just flatten out. So there's that one. And then again, I'm going to take my size 36 needle with the black top and poke the rib down that I hadn't worked on yet. Just going back over that. So we'll just do that. You can really tell a difference. These are the two that I've done, and then you can compare to the ones that I haven't done. So this is just our finishing stage. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video and finish that, and then we'll just need to put on our stem. Okay, so at this point I've been around the whole pumpkin and it's looking pretty good. So you can just take a look at yours now and see if there are any areas that still need any work. And if your ribs were very thin, or where the butterscotch roving was, you can always add a little more in at this point if you want to see them more prominently. So you would just spread out more and just poke it in really with any of the needles at this point. But I'm liking the look of mine here, so I think we're ready to work on the stem. So this one gets a dark brownish gray stem. That's with the color almond here. And when you do the other ones, this pumpkin actually gets a stem that's made with both stem colors mixed. So that's made with almond and sandstone jumbled up together. And then this other one is made just with the sandstone. So what we're going to do for the stem is get our almond, and I'm just going to pull off a piece, and I don't think we're going to need the whole thing, so I'm going to pull off something like this, and then I'm going to roll it in my hands and kind of jumble up the fibers quite a bit, and then I'm going to kind of just roll it into a stem-like shape, something like that. And you can even put it on at this point and see if you like the shape. And then I think I'm going to find my other needle, the one with the white tip, and these out of the way. So then I'm just going to put the stem on the mat, and I'm going to poke in from the top, flattening out those wispy fibers at the top, and then I'm just going to poke all of the sides, and again I'll just turn and poke the next section, so poking up and down each side section here. So I'm just going to turn and keep doing this till I've been all the way around. Might even go back twice, and then I'm going to poke in from the top again and make sure that the top is felted and there aren't too many fuzzy fibers sticking up from the top. And then here's what I have now. I might also roll it again in my hands now that it's well on its way, and that just kind of helps condense it a little more and smooth out the fibers a little more. So I'm just going to keep working this the same way till it feels pretty solid and it's not too fuzzy. And if we want it to shrink down more, the more we felt it, the narrower it will get. But if you like it a little wider, then we don't need to poke quite as much. We have something like that, so hopefully yours worked out, but there's extra roving in case it didn't, if you want to try it again. And you'll notice I didn't really do anything to the other side, so I was always felting at the top. So now what we're going to do on the other side is kind of pull, if you can see this, we're just going to kind of pull apart those fibers at the bottom so that it's looking like that, and then that's what we're going to use to attach it to the pumpkin. So I'm just going to set it on here, and I think my original was a little thinner. I'm going to pull on it a bit. I might felt it just a little bit more, get it narrowed out. If you want it to curve, kind of like my original one was curved, once you get it shaped on the mat, just poke it extra in one spot. So vigorously poke in one spot, and then you can see that kind of curved it a bit. Alright, so then decide how you want it to sit. If you want it to curve to one direction or another, figure that out, and then just sit it where you want it, and then I'm going to take the needle and just going to poke directly in, kind of at an angle there. So we're going to poke all around the base where we have this little bit of extra fiber. And some of that is going to tuck in. I'm kind of working on tucking that in as I go around, but not all of it will tuck in, and that's fine. So I'm just poking in pretty hard to get this because the pumpkin is pretty felted now at the top. So I'm just poking all around the base at that angle to get it nicely secured there. And most of the wool does disappear there around the base as it gets poked in. And there's what we have. So we'll compare to the original. So the one we just made was a bit bigger. They all turn out just a little bit different, and that's fine because that gives them a nice character. Just like if you went to a pumpkin patch, no two look exactly alike. So then if you're ready to start on your other pumpkins, you're really going to be making them the exact same way. And the only thing that is different we already did, which was to roll our core wool into these slightly different shapes in the beginning. So now you're just going to follow the exact same process, and they're going to turn out different shapes just because of the work we had already done. For this one though, where he has a stem that's combined colors, I'll just show you that real quick. The only difference with that is that you'll just pull out some wool from both of them, the almond and the sandstone, and then mixing them is just a matter of jumbling up the wool and doing that well before you start rolling it into your shape. Just kind of mix up the colors, and that's going to give this one just its own color for the stem so that they're all slightly different. So once I feel like I've gotten it mixed, that's when I will take it and roll it into the stem shape. Something like that, and all this will poke in. So we'd make that the same way. You're just going to jumble the fibers first in the beginning. Alright, so I'm feeling like we are pretty good at this point, but for anyone that would like to see the initial shaping of the other pumpkins, if you want to keep watching, then I will go ahead and shape the small one first and then the tall one. And we'll do this with the video sped up, but just so that you can watch if you want to. And really it's no different. We're just keeping in mind the other shapes that we want to end up with. But really most of that work was done when we did our initial rolling. Alright, so you can watch that if you want, but otherwise if you are feeling good, then you can proceed on following the same steps for your other two pumpkins. Okay, so there you can see the initial shaping of our short pumpkin. Compare there. Looks a bit like a hockey puck, slightly rounded. And we did that the same way as the first one. We just ended up with this because of the different way that we rolled. And so now I can show you the tall pumpkin. We'll see how that goes. Again, I'll speed up for this part. Okay, so there we have the initial shaping done on our taller pumpkin. I'll compare here. It might be just slightly bigger than our original as well, but it's still going to compact a bit as we put on its outer layer. Alright, so let me grab the originals here. So there they are. And I just want to say thank you for joining me for this pumpkin project. I hope that you really enjoyed it and that you like the way that yours turned out once you have them all finished. So if you want to check out our other kits or maybe find supplies to make something else or even supplies for more pumpkins, you can find us on Etsy with the username Felted Sky. Or we have a website at www.feltedsky.com. So once again, thanks for joining me, and as always, happy felting.